Okay, so this video finally is for topic 4. As you can see, the focus requires attention to both columns in table 2 and what you have written thus far. So, so while I did say that, I took the stress out of having to write an essay with an introductory statement, paragraph and a closing paragraph as such, and a thesis statement and all that, as you know, there obviously these topics, these paragraphs, and these tables do link up, right? There is a theme. And so I want you to be keeping that in mind. So you can kind of think of this last topic as a culmination of what you've been talking about, the data that you have been presenting, making sense of your experience, and learning about and applying what you've learned about, clarifying arguments. Really, the closing experience or the ultimate experience was supposed to be here for with respect to thinking about intellectual perseverance, with respect to all that you will have discussed through topic 4. But like I said, I think that there's plenty to work on through topic 4. Therefore, I've made this extra credit. But let's go ahead and focus on this part. So both columns in table 2. And so let's go ahead and read the questions. So we've got, how do your wrapper responses align with the professor's feedback and the grades you received for a given attempt to clarify an argument? So here you have your score, of course, and then you have the professor feedback, and then you have the data that you should have collected. It really makes sense to do this stuff in order, like to, watch a video, do the response, watch a video, do the response. Because by now, if you're using that technique instead of trying to listen to all the videos at once, you know exactly what I'm talking about because you already have this data. So let me give you an example, some examples of what I have in mind. So let's say that this right here, for the week 6 bundle wrapper, this one asked you how much time did you spend, and you said less than an hour. And let's say that for the discussion piece, you said that you predicted an A, and you talked about how confident you were about labeling and bracketing and whatnot. So that's the example, okay? Now, let's say that your score was more along the lines of a C, and I told you that you had major issues with bracketing and numbering. So there's one example of where you could talk about, you could answer that question. So it says, how does it align? So when you're thinking about this question, you can also be thinking in terms of compare and contrast. Does the grade that you predicted for this item right here, right, does the grade that you predicted maybe here, if I asked you for a grade prediction, does it align with the actual grade that you got? So you can say, well, when it came to, the week 6 bundle wrapper, I predicted that I would make an A, but then when I received my score, I saw that I made a C. Okay, so there's one way. Or maybe you said, I said I would make a C in the wrapper, and, to my surprise, I made an A. Let me rephrase that. In the wrapper, I said I thought I made a C with respect to my first argument, markup and reformat, and it turns out I made an A. And then you can say things like, I thought I wasn't going to do that good on the labeling, but then when it came to the labeling, what I can see with the professor's feedback is she didn't take any points for markup. And if she didn't do that, that means she didn't take any points off for labeling. So now I'm giving you some more coaching on how to work with this. So one way to use my feedback is this. If I didn't take any points off for markup, then that means you did everything correct. Maybe in the wrapper, you said that you were going to do something incorrect in the wrapper. Bracketing and numbering, labeling, eliminating excess verbiage. But maybe you did it correctly. Even if I didn't explicitly say in the markup section of the feedback, hey, you did the bracketing correctly, or you labeled all of your statements correctly, you can infer the feedback. And the way that you would do that is, if I look at what I say here, right, the professor feedback. So normally I say bonus points, and then I say what? Markup, reformat, uniform language. Go to the markup. Do you see me taking, for at least for these two, right? Because for these two, I gave you detailed feedback. In the markup, did I say anything about labeling and bracketing being off? So if I didn't, you can say, it would seem that I must have done okay with the bracketing and the numbering, or it seems that I must have done okay with the labeling, because in her personal feedback, she didn't say I had any issues with that. She didn't take off any points for labeling. So I'm just trying to show you or kind of coach you through how it could be possible, that you can say something here, but just because I don't speak to it specifically doesn't mean you can't infer what I might have said. So let me give you another example. Let's say down here, you predicted your grade for this, and you told me that you thought it would be higher than your grade for, you thought, let's say in this wrapper here, in the discussion piece here, you told me that you thought your grade for this would be higher than your grade for this. You gave me the reasons why in here you thought this score would be higher than this score. And let's say you said that you struggled with uniform language, you weren't sure when to employ uniform language when reformatting the argument, therefore you thought maybe you would get a lower grade. Look at the feedback. Did I look at where it says formatting in uniform language? Did I take off anything? Did I say anything about uniform language? If not, then you can say, oh, well, in my wrapper for this item, I said that I would get a low score because I thought I would not employ uniform language correctly, okay? But then when I look at the professor's feedback and I look at where she talks about reformatting in uniform language, she didn't take off any points. So what can you infer? That you must have done an okay job on that, right? Or it could be that, yes, you read my feedback and what you said in the wrapper about your performance, your predicted score, and why you think you predicted according to the score predicted, it could be the case that I do confirm what you were concerned with. So like, let's say, again, you said in this discussion piece about your work for this, that you thought you would lose points for uniform language. And you'd be like, yep, just as I predicted when in my discussion piece in the wrapper, when I said, that I was going to lose points for uniform language. The professor, when she graded my response, did in fact include a comment that I did not employ uniform language at all time. So in this part, I think, you could and should use some quotes. So I don't want you to just copy and paste all of my feedback or copy and paste your response. Select the most important phrases or a single statement to quote from. Kind of like, when you're comparing and contrasting a little bit. You're not unpacking the statement so much, but, you could quote yourself saying, in my wrapper response for the week 8, argument clarification task, I said, quote, I might lose some points for uniform language, close quote. And you can say, and this aligns with what the professor said in her feedback for my performance because she said, comma, quote, you forgot to employ uniform language in 2 statements, end quote. So do you see how I just did that? See, when you're dealing with this question, how do your wrapper responses align with the professor's feedback and the grades you received for a given attempt to clarify an argument? You can be thinking of, is what you said about why you would get a certain score in the wrapper for that argument work consistent with or opposing or contradictory to or contrast somehow with the feedback I gave you on how you actually did? Okay, now this is extremely important. If you did not, so on this one, I forgot to say, on this one, I did ask you to give me a predicted score. Some of you, I might have already graded this, so you can just give me the actual score, but otherwise you can give me a predicted score. And then whatever I have there, if I don't have anything, you can say, did not leave any kind of feedback or comment. For this one, just does not apply because I'm pretty sure I didn't give you a bundle wrapper for that. So don't worry about the bundle wrapper for this item. So maybe you're not even really dealing with this last row. Yeah, so really you're not going to, I'm just now realizing this is the first time that I do this assignment, or kind of assignment even, so you really don't have anything to do with this last row, I'm now realizing. Okay, so now, this is extremely important. If you did not do a wrapper, please explain why, even if you did most of them. So you need to be very specific, very precise. So you might have to say, well, I did not do, so like let's say you've compared and contrasted what you predicted your week 6 argument clarification score to be, and why, and the factors that you thought would lead to that score, and you compared and contrasted that to what your actual score was, and what I said were the mistakes that you made in that response. And then let's say you get to row 2, and you realize, hey, I did not do the wrapper, or I did not do the discussion piece for this argument clarification assignment. So then I need you to say that. Say, I did not do the week 8 discussion piece, item 2, for the week 8 argument clarification exercise. Put it in your own words. I'm just giving you an example. And then give me a reason. But on top of that, so here is where it really paid off to make sure that you at least made some kind of attempt to do the wrappers. Because if you didn't do a wrapper, let's say you didn't do any wrapper, now basically you have to do a modified wrapper, and I'm about to give you the instructions for that. So let's say you didn't do this wrapper. If you didn't do either a wrapper, then you're going to have to do this 2 times. So look at what it says. If you did not do a wrapper, please explain. So I already went over that. If you did not do a wrapper, imagine you could go back in time and complete it. What would you have said for each wrapper that you missed? Now, if you didn't do it and you've got a 0, you probably can't open it. If you did all the wrappers, you can just stop this video, but make sure that if you're going for the A-level response that you give me a nice sentence that tells me what you're going to be talking about. Now, if you did not do even just one of these wrappers, you need to continue listening to this video. Otherwise, you can stop and potentially be done with this assignment. All right, so here is your prompt, and this is going to apply for either one of these wrappers. So you're just going to have to do your best. Imagine that you're back in week 6. Imagine that you just submitted your first attempt to clarify an argument. My first question to you is, if you were to go back in time to when you had just submitted your first attempt to clarify an argument, what would you have predicted your score way back then? So you're just going to have to imagine that you have never submitted that. You've never gotten feedback. You've never gotten grades. If you could go back to week 6, at the moment you had just submitted your week 6 or your week 8 argument clarification assignment, what do you think you would have predicted as your score for week 6? If you didn't do the week 8 wrapper, what do you think? What would you have predicted as your score? And would you have thought it would have been higher or lower than the week 6 assignment? Second part, if you could go back in time, so for the score that you think you might have predicted back in the past, why would you have predicted that score? So again, if you didn't do the week 6 wrapper, then you have to say, well, if I could go back in time and do the wrapper right after submitting the argument clarification assignment, I think I would have predicted X. And then you have to write 4 more sentences explaining why you think back then you might have thought you would have gotten that score. I think I would have predicted the score because blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's say 3 more sentences. At least 2 of those sentences should elaborate, explain, and be very specific. No general, fuzzy statements. Be exact. Get into the reasons. Okay, that's all I have for you.